NASCAR and the team still don't have a charter deal, plus breaking down the playoff bubble drivers on this episode of Spencer Talks NASCAR. How's it going, everyone? Spencer Urquhart here, your host of the show. Appreciate everyone that's watching here on YouTube. Yes, indeed, ready to get this thing rolling. Gonna be a fun episode, y'all. We're gonna be discussing the charter deal, my thoughts on the NASCAR charter deal, and will the teams and the sport get a deal done, plus breaking down the playoff bubble. Going to discuss which tracks are coming up and how the playoff bubble drivers have done at those tracks recently. Our first topic of this episode, y'all, is going to be this charter negotiation. Silly season videos. I see y'all have been eating those up. Appreciate all the love with the views on those. NASCAR's been off the past couple weeks. You know, the news cycle been a little slow, but still a lot to talk about. And the thing that's kind of come to light here recently over this break is this charter, the looming charter deal, which is the equivalent of those that, you know, follow the NFL, like the CBA, basically, the collective bargaining agreement. This is the agreement between the teams and the sport as far as how they're going to distribute the revenue that the sport brings in. And from what Denny Hamlin has been saying, as far as from the team owner's perspective, that NASCAR has not been willing to budge much as far as their slice of the pie. NASCAR is very adamant on keeping their slice of the pie. They've gotten away with that for years, being able to take a lot of pie and kind of force the race teams to basically fund themselves. You know, that's why a lot of the best race teams are funded by people that have a lot of money. You know, Roger Penske owns Penske Truck Rentals, Rick Hendrick car dealerships. I mean, Joe Gibbs, former NFL head coach. You know, the three biggest owners in the sport all have big pockets. So I think the issue, though, for people like the Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan, a newer team like 23XI, yeah, Jordan has big pockets, but from someone like Michael Jordan, he's thinking like, well, I want this thing to last. I want this investment to pay off. I want this to be, I mean, Michael Jordan's a savvy businessman, obviously, with Jordan Brand. I mean, he's one of the most successful business people as far as, a former athlete turned business person. Definitely one of the most successful to transition over from athletics, being a great athlete to great businessman. And not just, I mean, there's a bunch of former athletes that start companies and, do little, mom and pop stuff. But Michael Jordan's like a legit business tycoon. I mean, I don't need to say any more about that. Everyone knows that fact. But I guess my point here is that if you're looking at this from a business standpoint, if you're Michael Jordan, you're like, I want this investment to pay off because he's put a lot into it. His team has done very well, 23XI. And I feel like Denny Hamlin's basically the mouthpiece for Michael Jordan. Jordan's the money and Hamlin's the mouthpiece that, as obviously they meet, I'm sure, and discuss all this, to where Hamlin is the one that, airs out the concerns. And he's been going on a lot of shows, but most recently the Kenny Wallace show, and was really breaking this thing down and basically saying how unless NASCAR is willing to budge, there could be trouble, because if they don't get this charter deal done, teams are going to just pick and choose when they want to race. I mean, with this current charter agreement they've got now, basically locks in the 36 full-time teams. They agree to show up every week due to this charter deal. And if they don't have this charter deal, it could become a situation like Denny was saying. They can't really afford to field multiple full-time entries. It could be a thing to where the third team for them will definitely be part-time, and they'll just pick and choose what events they want to run. They'll only go to the highest paying ones, and it's going to, I feel like, stunt the growth of the sport, where if you have this charter deal, that incentivizes the owners to want to keep investing and keep expanding. Because I think the whole thing with it is, and this is the thing where I think Danny is being a little unrealistic, is saying that they're going to be permanent charters. That, I think, is a bit of a stretch. I will say yes to that as long as you're performing. I think the charters still need to have some performance incentive to prevent starting parks. You don't want to just be like, all right, here it is. These are the 36 permanent charters, and then have it to where the teams at the butt end, like a Rick Way. You could throw RCR on there the way they've been running this year. But, teams that are Colleague's had a bad year this year. Teams like that, teams with drivers or their cars, in the bottom 4 of the charter owner standings. So to me, you could kind of play it like the way they play it in the English Premier League. I'm not a big soccer fan, but I know how the English Premier League works is that as long as you finish, I believe they have like 16 teams. I mean, I could be off on that number, but the point here is that I think they have like 16, 20 teams somewhere in there. And then I believe it's the bottom 2 drop down each year. And then they get their spots taken by the 2 they have like a league below them that then come up and then take their spots and then become Premier League teams. So what I'm thinking with this charter thing, how they should play this is they should be like, all right, if you finish top 30 in points, you're locked in. But if you're outside the top 30, then you could lose your spot if you get beat out by, let's just say there's a non-chartered team that decides to put together a full-time entry and they outrun one of the chartered teams. Well, guess what? They get that charter now, and the team they outran that's lowest in points loses that charter. That's how I think it should get done, to incentivize teams to keep pushing and to prevent teams from becoming starting parks. So that's just my take on it. I know that's probably easier said than done. I don't know all the business logistics and the negotiations and all that. That's all, above my pay grade for sure. It's one of them things where I think that could be somewhat of a middle ground. Because I think what the teams want right now, they want these permanent charters, which, I mean, yeah, if you're JGR, Hendrick, 2311, yeah, you don't have to worry about getting your charter stripped more than likely because, I mean, they're all signing the best drivers where they're not going to ever finish that far out. Plus, the way it's been this year, I mean, they haven't really had any successful teams outside the top 36 to where it's like, I mean, there would probably be a lot of years where the same 36 keep their charters. But, if there is a successful team, like let's say Legacy decides to make a third team but doesn't purchase a charter. If that third team they put together does well and outruns a chartered team and, at the end of your points, then to me, they then should inherit that charter and then they could, NASCAR, could kind of help be the mediator as far as the, negotiation. If you already have purchased a charter, if you're part of the initial charter agreement, yeah, you should get some compensation, because then at that point, boom, you get compensated, you lose your charter, but guess what? You just got compensated. So then you could come back the next year and earn that charter right back. You know what I'm saying? Like, it would keep teams motivated, keep incentivizing teams and give smaller teams hope, give them a path to attain a charter. If they can put together a really successful non-chartered team, then there's a way they can get a charter. Because under the current path, it's kind of like, I mean, you can buy a charter, but it's kind of, it's not really incentive-based. I think an incentive-based system would be healthier as far as creating more competition, encouraging outside investors to come in to where then they could be like, all right, we'll just do a non-chartered thing to start, kind of a low-risk thing, although I say that, I mean, you still got to, get the team going and stuff. And then if you ever would decide to pull out, I mean, you could, if you do well, and you could easily make the money back. And if the thing keeps growing, if the media rights deals keep getting bigger, if NASCAR, the sport, grows, big like they're thinking it could, then, if you get in now, then chances are you'll be profiting. And the problem with a lot of these race teams, what Hamlin was saying, is that they're not profitable because they're so expensive to maintain a race team. And a lot of the owners, they do it because they love it. And it's not a very profitable business model. Or like the NFL, owning an NFL team, MLB, NBA, they are making money hand over fist because they've got the collective bargaining agreements to where they get a big chunk of the pie from the league itself. So NASCAR has got to be more generous with these race teams, I feel like, and I'm glad Denny Hamlin's making people aware of this. I know Denny Hamlin can be annoying. I'll admit I'm not the biggest Denny Hamlin fan, but I think in this case he's making a great case because I think this is what people need to hear. People need to realize that NASCAR, the corporation, needs to step up and value their race teams, because let's be real, if the top race teams weren't on the track, you're not gonna get nearly as many people watching. I mean, yeah, you'll still have your diehards that watch no matter what. You can just have two cars on the track, they'll be still drinking their beer, but like a lot of fans like me that really appreciate the competitive aspect of the sport, if the best drivers and teams aren't on the track, then I'm probably not going to watch that race. I mean, I'm sure the Daytona 500 is still attract the full field, but let's just say there's a race like at Kansas or something. There's only 15 cars in there, and then half of them aren't even that good. I'm just going to be, I ain't watching that crap. I'm not watching that. That's terrible. So I think NASCAR will wise up and get something done. I just hope the teams don't give in too much. I hope they can get a slice of the pie that they deserve, because the France family's been getting away with stuff for too long that been kind of screwing the race teams low key. And I hope with this new agreement they can have the charter system was a step in the right direction, so I think they get it though. To me, if they play this smart, they're going to keep these race teams happy because they need these race teams. I mean, like the NFL, without the Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles, New Orleans Saints, just name NFL teams. If you take those teams away, no one's going to watch the NFL. The NFL is nothing without the team, just like NASCAR is nothing without the drivers. So if you don't get a deal done with the teams, and then as a result, it's a trickle down. I mean, they employ the drivers. I mean, then you're not going to have a product, and I mean, then you're going to have it's going to be terrible, man. Like back in the day with the MLB strike and the NFL strike. Like, I mean, that no one wants that. That stuff sucks. So let's hope they get these deals done. I haven't had any MLB or NFL strikes recently, and in NASCAR, I remember they a few years back. It was a little before my time, but they had the almost had the split, I believe, in the late '90s with like the SMI and the tracks, which I think the tracks, they get a pretty good cut because it's like basically it's split between like the teams, the NASCAR and the tracks. So I think the tracks get treated pretty good. It's the teams that kind of get in the short end, but that's just my thoughts on it. Like I said, I'm just an outsider, just giving my thoughts. I mean, if you want to roast me in the comments, feel free. But I mean, I'm not claiming to be some expert on this topic. I just think it's interesting, as a lifelong fan of the sport. I just think it's interesting, kind of the crossroads that it's come to. And I'm just hoping they get something done because I definitely don't want to see the field splintered. I want to see the best drivers in the world competing on track each and every week. That's the beauty of this sport. Unlike a lot of other motorsport series, NASCAR it's basically every week, every Sunday you can count on NASCAR. I mean, we've been off the past 2 weeks, but I mean, it was a rare circumstance with the Olympics. Most of the time there's no more than one off week, and then you have your little brief off season in the winter, and then you're back at it come February. So I mean, that's I love that about this sport. I love the short off season. I love that there's always something going on, always something to talk about. So anyway, yeah, we'll see if they can get this thing done. I hope they do something they could kind of use as leverage here as this Netflix thing. They're trying to do another season of the NASCAR Netflix thing, which I enjoyed it. They were like 5 episodes. They were all good. I felt like I enjoyed seeing the unfiltered behind the scenes stuff. But the teams are threatening to not do it this year, amidst these charter negotiations. So unfortunately, we might not have a Netflix series this year because I think these negotiations are going to drag on for a while longer. And, hopefully they can get it done before the playoffs because that's when the best content from the Netflix thing came was, during the playoffs. So hopefully they can strike a deal before it ends. But they only got about a month left because we only have 4 more races until the playoffs. But speaking of the playoffs, a good segue. Let's talk playoffs here. We're going to go over the bubble drivers, y'all, and then but before we get that, we'll discuss the drivers, go over the ones locked in. We got the playoff standings right here. Kyle Larson leads the Cup Series and wins with 4. Missed the race, missed the Coke 600, but got his waiver. Thank goodness. That was a whole fiasco. When I was on my little hiatus, I almost did an episode ranting about that because that really annoyed me, but they gave him his waiver. It's all good. We got three-time winners this year: Denny Hamlin, William Byron, and Christopher Bell. It's been a little while since Hamlin and Byron won. Most of their wins came early in the season. Christopher Bell's gotten hot here in the summer. He got off to kind of a slow start, but he's won a lot here recently. Same with Ryan Blaney, now a two-time winner, should be a three-time winner. He had I think he ran out of gas the last lap at Gateway and then allowed Austin Cindric to win. And speaking of the rest of the guys with only one win, we've got 7 drivers with 1 win. Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, both really good in points. Even if they didn't have a win, they'd for sure be playoff guys. Same with Brad Keselowski and Alex Bowman. They've both had good years. Keselowski finally broke his dry spell, won at Darlington. You know, he deserved to have a win this year for sure. Kind of got robbed at Talladega, so he got redemption at Darlington. And then Bowman broke his dry spell, won the Chicago street race, been very consistent this year. The 3, though, kind of black sheep. A win, but they had kind of down years. Joey Logano, he's been a little better lately. He got off to a really bad start, but Logano, you know, got the win at Nashville, starting to turn his ship around. Could be a dark horse championship contender. But then the 2 that are just kind of, I'm going to just say they're going to be field fillers, you know, round of 16, one and done, y'all. Daniel Suarez and Austin Cindric both got very fluky wins. Suarez won the 3-wide photo finish at Atlanta. Could have easily gone to Ryan Blaney or Kyle Busch. And then Austin Cindric, I mean, got lucky that Ryan Blaney ran out with a lap to go, and so he stole the win at Gateway. But, you know, we'll see. Maybe they'll get something going come playoff time, but they haven't really shown me much in the regular season, so I'm not going to bank on them doing much in the postseason. So let's discuss the guys on the bubble. Technically, Martin Truex a bubble driver because, I mean, theoretically, if you have 4 new winners, he could get bumped out. It could be a repeat of, what year is that, like 21 or 22, when he had a huge points cushion because he had 15 different winners. He got booted out of the playoffs, but I don't see that happening this time around. He's got a 108-point cushion, plus the next race coming up, Richmond, and then Michigan, the next 2 races coming up. He's really good at both of those tracks. So there's a good chance he picks up a win here before the playoffs. He finished 4th at the spring Richmond race. Should have won that thing, got that thing stolen from him by Denny Hamlin there, and then the late race restart junk. But Truex, man, he's been kind of cold recently. It seems like he got off to a really good start. Seems like, though, ever since he's announced his retirement, he's just been kind of, I mean, he hadn't been bad, but it's like he just hadn't really been much with the leaders. But, you know, like I said, he's got 2 of his best tracks coming up, so he could break his winless spell here coming up. Even if he doesn't, he'll still make the playoffs. 108-point cushion. He ain't blowing that. Ty Gibbs has a nice little cushion there, 42. Still looking for that first Cup Series win. It's kind of reminded me of the Chase Elliott thing. It took Chase Elliott a little while to get his first win, but once he got it, then he started winning a whole bunch. I think that's going to be a similar script with Ty Gibbs. You know, he's still very young, you know, still learning the Cup car, getting in the groove there. So might be a little while before Ty Gibbs gets that first Cup win, but I think he could maybe get something done in the playoffs, you know. But these next 4 races, he was kind of mid at Richmond in the spring, finished 16th. Did okay at Michigan last year, finished 11th. Daytona, crapshoot. But in Darlington, he was runner-up to Keselowski. Maybe could have some success there again, you know, maybe steal a win. So Ty Gibbs been a little off, though, lately. He has not had a very good summer. He's had a lot of engine trouble. I'm not sure if that's, I don't know what he's been doing, something too hard with I don't know, all the technical aspects of this next gen car. If it's just bad luck or there's something he's doing wrong, I'm not sure. But yeah, he has not been too hot lately. But you know, he could get hot in the playoffs. I mean, you never know. I mean, he's in JGR equipment, and I'm almost certain he'll make it. I think he's like a round of 12 guy that could maybe even make round of 8 if things break right. He could steal a win in the round of 12. So he's just been in a slump lately, so he might end up just a one and done. You know, still very young, but I think his breakout will come eventually. It's just a matter of time. Not sure when. You know, still very young, but it's going to happen at some point. As much as I hate to see it as a Kyle Busch fan, but I mean, just got to accept it. Chris Buescher, our first true bubble driver here, only plus 17, man. What a shame it would be if Chris Buescher misses the playoffs. I mean, he's had a really good year. He just had so much bad luck. Lost to Larson I think that was the closest finish in NASCAR history, where he lost to Larson and then got wrecked by Reddick at Darlington. That allowed Keselowski to get that win. It was kind of ironic because Reddick, one that stole the win from Keselowski at Talladega, and then by getting in the Busher at Darlington, he allows Keselowski to break his dry spell and win at Darlington. So weird how things work out like that. But unfortunately, Chris Buescher, he was very upset after Darlington, yelling at Reddick, saying, "I don't have one of these stickers," referencing when you get a win, they put a sticker on your car. And yeah, he still has yet to get one of those stickers. So, the next two tracks, are good for him, kind of like with Truex. He got a top 10 at Richmond in the spring, finished ninth, and then won Michigan last year. He's the defending Michigan winner. So there's a decent chance he picks up a win in these next two. He got really hot down the stretch last season right before the playoffs. Ended up a round of 8 driver, won like 3 of the last 5 races before the playoffs, won at Daytona. Got Daytona coming up. And then Darlington, a lot of good tracks for Chris Buescher. He could definitely get a win. He's just got to avoid trouble. The thing with him here, when you're in this spot, you don't want to get too aggressive because you got this little cushion. You don't want to blow it by doing something stupid. You don't want to pull a Kyle Busch, dare I say it, and wreck yourself out of it. Because, man, Kyle is just – he's been a wrecking ball, to say the least. Now 112 out. Can't even really consider him a bubble driver anymore. It's embarrassing, but – anyway, we'll get to him in a minute. But, yeah, Chris Buescher, I think this top 15 is pretty solid. It's really this 16 spot that I think is a real wild card, because if there are no new winners, it's going to come down to Ross and Bubba. Briscoe, Kyle Busch too far behind. But if there is a new winner, though, then these guys can end up jostling with Chris Buescher for the last spot. We look at the list down there. Bubba, Briscoe, KB, Gillen, McDowell, Josh Berry. That's all those guys are capable of winning at Daytona. You still got Daytona. That's a wild card race, so that could open up the gate for another new winner. But if there isn't a new winner, I think it comes down to Ross and Bubba, and I think it's going to be a tight battle, because when we look at their finishes at these next 4 tracks, they're pretty close. Ross finished 15th at the Richmond Spring Race, 7th at Michigan the last time they went there, 21st at Daytona, 11th at Darlington. Bubba 13th at Richmond, 18th at Michigan, 5th at Daytona, 7th at Darlington. So can't really worry about the Daytona results. Either of them have had great seasons, but they're both respectable. Both pretty, I'd say both deserving of the playoffs. It's just with the win and you're in thing, Suarez and Cindric get in is kind of BS in my opinion, because who would be 16th? Okay, Briscoe. I think it'd be a battle with like Briscoe, Suarez, and Kyle Busch would be battling for the last spot, if not for the win and you're in crap. Cindric wouldn't even be close. Cindric, I think, is down in the points with like Barry and Gregson and guys like that. He's the one that really got lucky, but it is what it is. The system is what it is. So it's going to come down to Ross and Bubba. Bubba's he's been hotter lately, man. Ross has been, I hate to say Ross is going to miss the playoffs, but the way it's been trending, man, I'm kind of thinking he might. He has not been driving well. His track house has not been looking good. Chevy, unless you're Hendrick, all the Chevys have been slow other than the 4 Hendrick Chevy. House has struggled. RCR obviously struggled mightily. Colleague struggled mightily. Spire hadn't really had the come up they were hoping for. So I'm going to go out and say Bubba's going to knock Chastain out. I really do. The way it's been trending, Bubba was kind of far back. He's already closing out to 7, and he's got 4 races left. He could leapfrog Chastain as soon as next week. So, yeah, I'm kind of out on Chastain, y'all. Unless he can steal a win here, maybe he'll still win at Daytona or something. But the way things have been trending is not looking good for old Justin Marks and Pitbull. And the rumors swirling about Pitbull potentially selling his share of Trackhouse. They shot that down real quick. But, if this team was performing well, they wouldn't have rumors swirling like that. And also Daniel Suarez, still not under contract. Their third team is in flux, with this new charter thing. Do they buy a charter, get SVG in there, Zane Smith? I don't know. They're just kind of an organization in flux right now. They've got a lot of stuff going on as far as their future. So I don't know if this is their year. If Chastain misses the playoffs, that's pretty embarrassing on his part and their part. Because he made the championship 4 in 2022. Did the Hail Melon look like he was one of the sport's rising stars, and now he's on the brink of missing the playoffs. And I mean, it's like he's supposed to be in the prime of his career. A guy like Kyle Busch, I mean, Kyle Busch has had his heyday. I mean, if someone tries to roast Kyle Busch, like, got 2 championships, bro. I mean, you can hate on Kyle Busch all you want, but man's got hardware, bro. I mean, and he's won every big race other than the Daytona 500. I mean, if you try to talk crap on Kyle Busch, I mean, just look at his career accomplishments, and you might want to think twice about that. But Ross, I mean, Ross needs to do more, man, before we consider him an elite driver. And if he misses the playoffs, man, that's bad. That's a bad look. So I'm going to predict Bubba, but I definitely think Ross has more to lose. Bubba was kind of under pressure, too. I mean, same with Busch. I mean, this is kind of a messed up deal. Whoever misses it out of those 3, they're going to be devastated because, I mean, hey, all those guys expected to make the playoffs. The Cindric Suarez thing threw it off because the 2, Bubba and Kyle Busch are the 2 right now. You're like, wow, they're not in the playoffs. Briscoe's exceeded expectations. Him and Barry. Stewart Haas has done well. Ford in general has been a lot better lately. I mean, as you see Gilliland and McDowell kind of creeping into the picture. Front row been fairly respectable this season. You know, a lot of mid-pack cars have been Fords, like Stewart Haas front row, and then RFK and Penske have been front runners for the most part lately. But yeah, these Chevys have really stunk. And Kyle Busch somehow still 19th in points despite his embarrassingly bad run of races the past few weeks. My gosh. And it's not only going to get much better looking at his results here at these coming tracks. Richmond didn't run well in the spring. Michigan crashed out last year, finished last. Daytona finished 12th in the 500. You know, definitely capable of winning at Daytona. RCR, that's the one thing they do well is, the restrictor plate track. So maybe Kyle will have a stroke of good fortune and win the Daytona 400-mile race. But, I mean, you obviously can't bank on that. And then Darlington struggled mightily in the spring 27. So not looking good for KB. I mean, I'd say his odds to make the playoffs are probably like, I was going to say 50-1, probably more realistically like 100-1 or even 200-1. I mean, it's looking pretty bleak. He's very much a long shot. It's basically, unless he wins, he's out. And I'm not confident he's going to win because, I mean, the only race I feel like he really even has hope at is the Daytona race. I feel like all the other ones he's going to, RCR can't keep up. So if your only hope is Daytona, then that means you're basically cooked. So yeah, I mean, basically everyone's cooked here other than Bubba and Ross, but, someone can steal the win at Daytona. Could be a different story, but let me know your thoughts. Let me know who you think is going to make the playoffs. I'm going to say Bubba gets in over Ross and the rest stays the same, but let's say you comment your thoughts. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Appreciate everyone that watched. That's going to do it here for Spencer Talks NASCAR. Appreciate everyone. We'll be back to preview Richmond and talk more about the stretch run here heading into the playoffs. So until then, we'll catch y'all later.